everyone. So tonight I'm going to be doing a teriyaki stir fry by request. So I don't have a wok, so I'm doing this just kind of with what I have. But you'll notice at the beginning of the video, like always, I posted a screenshot of my ingredients that I'm using and also a screenshot of the recipe I'm basing this off of, which is from cremdelacrumb.com, so thank you for this recipe. We are probably going to be making a couple little changes here and there, but I've never made a stir fry before, so this is going to be an experience for all of us. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of prep everything to get ready to go, because in the stir fry you basically just throw everything in the pan and you get it going. But I want to have everything ready to go. So I've actually already pre-cooked my ramen noodles, so you would have seen at the beginning I had 2 chicken ramen noodle packets. I actually went ahead and just cooked those noodles, drained them, and they're just sitting on the side waiting to be added to the pan. You can hold on to that seasoning if you have somebody that really likes ramen noodles, or you can just throw it away. But you basically just take 2 of those 20-cent packages of ramen, throw them in a pot, boil them until they're done, drain them, and then I've got them, like I said, sitting on the side waiting for us. So I've already done that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to chop up my 3 green onions to get these ready. And my green onions, I tend to take this outside piece, and I'll just peel that all the way off. Sometimes a really sharp knife is helpful in this moment, which of course is the one thing I did not grab ahead of time. We're going to grab that, but if you just take that down the side, and then I just chop off my end. I also like to take basically the edges of each of the greenery, and I just chop a little bit off depending on where I think that it doesn't look very good anymore. Usually it's at least an inch or so. So that's basically how I prep my green onion. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all 3 before we get going. You don't have to do your green onions like this. I'm sure somebody's yelling at me because this is a waste. Sorry, it's how I roll. So now I've got my 3. They're all about the same length, so this will be nice. So I'm just going to take them all 3 and I'm just going to give them a quick chop all the way down. Throw these in a little bowl. Just keep them on the side. We'll need them later to pour into our stir fry, but I need my cutting board to be able to cut my meat. Alright, so this calls for 1 pound of flank steak or skirt steak. I've got just under 2 pounds here, so I'm going to just honestly probably just use all of this, because I don't have another recipe to use this for this week. Flank steak, you will notice that I'm not nearly as picky about when I start cutting it. I'll pull off like major pieces of fat, just because again, I'm super picky. But I tend to not mess with skirt steak too much. I'll take off some of this that's like really, really fatty. I'm a very visual eater, so I'm kind of amazed I eat as much as I do. My poor husband will try anything, and he'll get me to try it sometimes. But man, I'm just not nearly that adventurous. Alright, so like I said, you don't have to trim yours. I usually don't mess with it too much, but if I just notice a ton of like the hard fat, that's usually the stuff I'm trying to kind of slice off. But said it's not a huge deal with skirt steak, flank steak, anything like that. Not a huge deal to me. Alright, so you want to cut this into very thin strips. I want to go against the grain because I want it to actually be a little more tender. So when you go against the grain, it'll cook, and also when you bite into it, then you're going to chew it. You'll see it's got all of these layers. So when you cut against the grain, then you're able to pull it whenever you go to pull with your teeth, it just separates. If I were to cut this with the grain, that's when you start getting that really chewy meat that you can't really get off I'm gonna grab a bigger knife. Turn this because it'll be easier. So I'm just gonna start slicing these babies down. So I'm gonna do first this way, and then I'll start cutting them into smaller sections when I get through going opposite of the grain. So I'm aiming for about this size. So what, 1, 2, 3 inches, about 3 inches long-ish, 2 to 3 inches long. Now this, because I left this a little bit thicker, I'll probably wind up cutting my pieces and then cutting them again in half. So as you can see, I've got all of my meat all prepped and ready, chopped up, ready to go. So now I'm going to actually make my teriyaki sauce. So the first thing that it calls for is a cup of soy sauce. I'll be using Kikkoman's because it's my favorite. Alright, so we're going to pour a cup of soy sauce in here. The next thing is a 1/3 cup of water. A 1/3 cup of water, and then we also need a 1/3 cup of rice vinegar, also Kikkoman. So pour that gently in there. And then we need 2/3 cup sugar. So because I've already had a liquid in here, I'm just going to take a paper towel real quick and just wipe out my 1/3 cup so that way my sugar doesn't necessarily stick. So there's 1/3. Still sticking a little, but not bad. And 2/3. Okay, so there's our sugar. We need 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. I'm actually just using my jarred minced garlic for this. I'm getting a little low on my big cloves and I want to hold on to those. Alright, so I've pulled here a 1/4 teaspoon, so because we need 2 full ones, I'm going to do 8 of these. And I usually overfill them a little bit, so don't ever worry about that either. I always err on the side of more garlic is better. And then we need 1/2 teaspoon of the ground ginger. So again, because this wasn't something wet, I'm just going to do a quick wipe off with a paper towel. So this calls for 1/2 teaspoon, so I'm going to use 2 of these. Again, if you go a little over that flat edge, it's okay. This isn't baking. Cooking. I am just dropping lids left and right. Okay, and then we need a 1/4 teaspoon of our red pepper flakes. Hey look, another new one. I guess there was more than just the rice vinegar I was out of. And now this, you can actually adjust depending on if you want it spicier. Just double it up, triple it up, do whatever you want to do. I am not a huge spice fan. I do like red pepper flakes, but I'm not good with spice. Alright, so we're just going to kind of whisk this all together. You can also just use a fork. But you want to do a real gentle whisk. Just, you want to get everything combined. Remember, you've got that sugar in here. So we want to try and get that to where it starts combining and starts, you know, really getting in with the liquid. Smells good. So you can still hear how it's kind of grainy-ish. And switch up the direction. Set our sauce to the side. Put my whisk over here. So the next thing we want to do is we want to dissolve our cornstarch into cold water. Now there's not a lot of this, so that's why I have such a small bowl. So with that, we need 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and 4 tablespoons of cold water. So I'm going to do my dry one first, mainly just because it's right here. Now with this, I try and keep it as even as I can. So what this is going to do is this is a thickening agent, and they have you combine it with water, so that way you're not getting clumps of cornstarch in your food. Because yes, it is a thickener, but if you pour this directly into like a sauce, like our soy teriyaki sauce we made over here, it literally will just clump, and it's so gross. Trust me, one of the very first times I ever used cornstarch, it was awful. So always make sure you combine your cornstarch with water. So it's a 1 to 2. So 1 serving of cornstarch, 2 servings of water. So 2 tablespoons here, we're doing 4 tablespoons of cold water. So I'm going to go ahead and add my water to this, get it all nice and stirred and mixed up, and then we'll come back and we'll finish this recipe. Okay, so we're going to play with the camera being on the opposite side here just so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. So everything else for now on is all going to be out of my big pan here. So we're going to put this on to about medium heat, and then we're going to throw some of our sesame oil in here. But here's the kicker. I don't have sesame oil. I actually have this amazing stuff. So this is called garlic funk sauce. It's sold at a little place out here called Los Olivos. Hopefully I pronounced that right. But they call it their garlic funk sauce, but it's made with sesame oil, and it has red pepper in it, it's got garlic in it, and it's actually, I guess it's fish sauce, but this stuff is amazing. So I'm subbing this for my sesame oil, so don't judge. But you are more than welcome to just use sesame oil for yours. So like I said, I'm going to turn this on about medium. Muscles! Alright, so I'm just going to pour a good little amount in there. And we're going to let that start heating up, and then we're going to throw our meat and actually coat our meat in this. So I am going to still throw a little bit of salt and pepper over my meat because I am a, again, firm proponent for seasoning your meat before you put it in anywhere. When you bite into meat, all the flavor might be around it, but if you don't season the meat itself, the meat still might taste kind of crappy. So I'm going to go ahead and salt and pepper my meat pile real quick. Doesn't that sound attractive, meat pile? So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and then we're going to throw this in our pan, and then we'll start adding everything else. Okay, so I'm going to start putting my meat in here. Now it's not quite sizzling yet, but it's a big pan. There's going to be a lot of meat. So if I don't hear it start sizzling here in a little bit, I'll probably turn the heat up a little bit. How many times can I say a little bit in 30 seconds? You tell me. Alright, so we're going to throw that in there. I'm going to take my spatula and just kind of mix all this around so it all gets a little bit of this garlic funk sauce all over it with the oil and fish sauce and the extra little bit of garlic and some more red pepper flake. Like I said, I did salt and pepper my meat. Alright, so we're just going to let all that kind of evenly spread through my pan. And I am going to go ahead and turn my heat up, I think to between like a medium high. I want this to start cooking here pretty quick. So basically what we're going to do is as soon as this meat gets all cooked in, we're going to start throwing in our veggies, we're going to start throwing in our sauce, we're going to throw in our noodles, add a little bit of sesame seed because to stir fry you have to have sesame seed, right? Also, a little side note, whenever you make your cornstarch and water mixture, if you leave it sitting, you'll notice that it kind of starts separating. Just keep a little spoon or something handy. I kept my little quarter teaspoon. And just give it a quick stir again. You'll feel a little bit of tension from that cornstarch at the bottom. Just give it a quick stir and it will all come back. Alright, so see, now you can hear that little bit of sizzling going on. Now we got some cooking action going. I can't even tell you how good this sauce smells. I've actually used it to make my ramen itself a little bit fancier. So if you're just stuck for some reason one week and you couldn't get groceries, or you just are for some reason like me and randomly crave chicken ramen noodles, I actually have started making those. And instead of me adding anything else really to it, I'll still throw in the chicken packet, but I wind up throwing in about 2 tablespoons of this garlic funk sauce, and oh my god, it makes the ramen so much better. So, little side note, if you can get a hold of this sauce, it's amazing to add to things. Alright, so we are basically, we're going to let this cook until they start browning. Not quite done yet, but we want to get them where they're browned on both sides. And then we're going to start throwing our vegetables in here. I probably should have made my pieces a little bit smaller, I can tell you that right now. There's probably, I still have a few in here that are a little bit thicker than a normal like stir fry meat would be. You can also actually buy already pre-cut and ready to go stir fry meat from the grocery store, so if you want to do that, feel free. Alright, now I bought washed and ready to eat stuff, so I don't have to worry about cleaning anything off, which is nice. So the first thing it says to do is to throw in all of your veggies, so your snow peas and your broccoli, so not my green onion yet. But I'm going to go ahead and throw my snow peas in here. And this is why it's usually better, I think, to have the wok for doing stir fries, because the veggies are big, the meat, everything else, once you've got it all in there, starts taking up a lot of room. Alright. We're just going to give that another quick stir before we throw some broccoli in here. We'll get our snow peas coated with a little bit of the sauce. Go ahead and turn our heat down, more to like medium, a little bit over medium. We don't want to burn our veggies. We want everything to keep cooking. And I don't need my veggies getting all crispy and burned. Alright, now this broccoli has probably about double the amount that I need. These are again kind of something you can decide how much you want of everything in your stir fry. I'm actually going to break off pink piece florets. Make them a little bit more bite-sized. I'm just going to break off just enough for what I think I would like. I'm not a huge broccoli fan. I'm more of a cauliflower girl, so. But I believe the recipe calls for about 2 cups. And like I said, my bag here is about 4 to 5 cups. So, I'm just going to add in until I'm happy with the amount of broccoli. You can see my snow peas are starting to turn super, super green, which is awesome. That means they're starting to get soft and get some moisture in there. Alright, let's go ahead and stir this up a little. And I almost wish I had a bigger pan, which I do, but I thought this one would be okay. So, take it from me, learn your lessons from me, always go with the bigger pan. I'm actually okay with the amount of broccoli in here, just because there's so many snow peas. There's a lot of greenery already going on in here. Alright, so we're going to let those cook until our meat stops bleeding. You can actually keep this in just another Ziploc baggie, so I'll just put this in a big Ziploc baggie, put it back in my fridge, and I'll make something for my husband later. It says about 2 to 3 minutes, but you need to gauge it depending on how you cut your meat. So like I can still see I've got some of these bigger pieces of meat that are still kind of bleeding. So I'm going to keep it in here for at least another 3 to 4 minutes probably. And then I'll go ahead and finish this up with our sauce and then our thickener and green onion. But we're going to let this finish cooking first. Okay, so I've decided to hold my camera because I wanted you to see how green all of my snow peas have gotten. And I've got everything going. It's boiling now. So now the next step is I'm going to actually add in all of our sauce. And then it wants you to return this to a boil. I apologize for all of the movement until I can figure out a better way to show you my pan. This is how we're going to have to work right now. So once that's poured in, I'm going to mix this all around. We want this to come, like I said, to a boil. So I usually just try and make my way all the way around the pan. Just make sure that soy sauce gets in, or teriyaki, excuse me, our homemade teriyaki. Want to make sure that gets in every little crevice. Push everything down. Alright, so once this comes to a boil, we're actually going to put in our cornstarch, and then that way it'll thicken up our sauce. So let this come to a boil. If you have to turn up the heat a little, go for it. If you can just keep the heat where it is, even better. But let this come to a boil once it starts actually boiling, not simmering. So simmer would just be like you see, just like these little bumps that are happening in my liquid. I want this to be boiling like it was before we poured in our homemade teriyaki. So once that gets done, I'll come back. We'll go back to the regular view, and then we'll pour in our cornstarch. We'll finish everything up, and then you'll get the picture of what it looked like at the end. Okay, so we can see, hopefully, that we are boiling now. The cornstarch has started kind of separating, so I'm going to really quickly just give this a little stir until I don't feel the hesitancy of stirring anymore. You'll notice that it kind of looks very milky. You also want to make sure that as soon as you pour this in, you really start working it into your sauce. Okay. So I'm going to have this ready, and basically as I start pouring this in, I'm just going to kind of put it all throughout. And again, I'm going around the whole pan. I want to make sure it really gets in there. You're not going to see anything happen like immediately. It's not like some miracle thing. But let it sit, let it start boiling, and you'll start noticing that your consistency will start getting thicker. You can even hear like the boiling sounds thick, if that makes sense. Oh yeah. Sauce is thickening up nicely. It's definitely thickening up on one side more than the other. So I'm going to try and make sure that I'm getting this spread. So this is why you don't want to stir just in one spot and just hope that it kind of works. Spread that all throughout the pan. Make sure that you are stirring all around the pan. You can see, you can hear it. See how thick it already is? Okay, so once this gets to the thickness that you are almost happy with, because you're going to continue keeping this on heat, but just not on high heat anymore. You want to turn your heat down to low once you're like on that verge of, man, it's so close to the thickness that I want. And this is pretty dang close to where I want it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my heat down to low. And like I said, you're going to hear that it's still cooking, so just give it a quick stir. Don't let it get stuck. Non-stick pans are amazing for things like this. Get all of my pretty greens and my meat, all that red pepper flake. Man, I hope this is good. Woo. Okay, so now I'm gonna throw in my green onions. So I've got those still in my bowl. A lot of greenery in here. Green onions are another thing that if you want a little less, cut less. If you want a little more, cut more. Like I say almost every time, this is cooking. This is not necessarily have to go by the book. Baking is a total science. You need to follow recipes pretty much to the T, but there's little changes you can make here and there, I think, with baking. But cooking, wide open palette for you. Alright, so we've got those in there, and then now I'm going to move my noodles. So, little side note, hopeful tidbit. So I pre-cooked these. I had them sitting here without water or anything in them, and they got stuck. It was one giant blob of just noodles because ramen noodles are so starchy anyway. So, little trick for you. I basically just ran some water again over them, and then I took a fork to start separating them. So now you can see I've got noodles that I can actually work with and play with. I still have the water in here, which is why I'm not pouring it just all directly from my pot. And it's okay if a little bit of the water, a little bit of the moisture gets in here. It's not a big deal. You don't want too much to get over here because you've worked very hard to make this a nice thick teriyaki sauce. But a little bit is not going to hurt anything. Almost all the way. And of course, if you want to, you can do my little trick and then throw them in a strainer again right before you're about to put them in, and then just pour them all at once. Not going to hurt my feelings if you decide to do it that way. I honestly probably would, but my strainer is already covered in other dirty dishes now, so. Alrighty. So now we want to get these mixed in here. So I'm going to kind of just take this and push them around for the moment. Just to get them really kind of in there and incorporated. Now you can also grab, start thinking and then I start stirring. You can also grab your tongs and mix this around with your tongs. Just because then you can kind of pick up a group of noodles and, you know, move them where you want them. This doesn't really do that so easily. But that's basically about it. So now we've got this. I'm going to let it sit, let those noodles kind of soak in a little bit of the juice, maybe for like 30-45 seconds. I'm going to turn my heat off because I don't want this really cooking anymore. But I want this to stand for a little bit, let it get thickened up again. And then I'm going to go ahead and plate everything. I'll garnish it with a little bit of sesame seed. You can get toasted sesame seeds, you can get regular sesame seeds, or just no sesame seeds, whatever you want to do. So, at the end of this, you'll see a nice picture of my final product. I'll let you know what my husband and I thought. And if you've got any suggestions or requests for anything else you want me to try, even if it's something I've never done before like this, definitely just hit me up. And thanks again for subscribing. Thanks again for watching. And hopefully we'll just keep getting better with time.